Mesdames et messieurs, bonsoir et bienvenue à cette dégustation virtuelle. Je suis Daniel Belleville du marketing événementiel à la SAQ et je serai votre animateur pour la soirée. Je suis très choyé de pouvoir animer cet événement et d'avoir nul autre que M. Torres, directeur général de Familia Torres, comme invité d'honneur en direct de sa chambre d'hôtel à New York. J'aimerais vous rappeler que la soirée se déroulera en anglais et en français. Procédons sans plus tarder au déroulement de la soirée. Avant chaque service, je vais nommer le vin qui sera dégusté. De cette façon, vous pourrez vous le servir. Je vous rappelle que vous pouvez mettre sur pause cette dégustation à n'importe quel moment afin d'y aller à votre rythme et ensuite poursuivre comme bon vous le semble. De plus, tous les produits dégustés sont en vente à l'unité présentement dans SAQ.com et leurs fiches d'information sont disponibles dans le carnet qui vous a été envoyé par courriel. D'ailleurs, à ce sujet, je vous invite à inscrire vos commentaires sur la fiche du produit et de donner une cote à ce dernier lorsque vous l'aurez dégusté. Maintenant, après chaque description de produit, il y aura une période de questions. Nous vous invitons à soumettre à tout moment vos questions par texto au numéro qui sera à l'écran tout au long de la soirée ou via la boîte de clavardage à la droite de la vidéo. Dans la mesure du possible, nous tenterons de répondre au plus grand nombre d'entre elles. Alors, sans plus tarder, voici notre invité d'honneur, Mr. Torres. Good evening and welcome.
Bonsoir, bonsoir Daniel, je suis très content d'être avec vous et tous les amis de la SAQ. Hein? Et je m'excuse parce que mon français n'est pas fantastique, je vais parler un peu plus avec l'anglais, mais merci beaucoup, je suis très content d'être avec vous.
Vous êtes très modeste, je sais que tout le monde est très content de votre français présentement. Alors, so it's a privilege to have you with us this evening and to have the opportunity to taste some of your magnificent wines. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure.
Donc maintenant, pour vous à la maison, je vous invite à vous servir un verre de Milmanda Conca de Barbera Chardonnay 2013. So, Senor Torres, as you may know, the SAQ is celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. For all of us, we would like to thank you for producing a special edition 100th anniversary label. It's greatly appreciated.
Well, thank you very much. We always had a great relationship with the SAQ. We have always a great connection with Québec, you know, with the Torres family. Already my grandfather, he was going there in order to taste the wine, so we are very happy to contribute with this special edition.
Excellent, thank you very much. And also, talking about milestones, Familia Torres is celebrating its 150th anniversary, if I'm not mistaken, this year, correct?
That's right. Well, that was on 2020, but we're still celebrating somehow. Yes.
Excellent. So, well, on behalf of myself and all the participants, feliz cumpleaños y salud.
Thank you very much. Salud.
Salud. To start the evening, we're curious to hear about your history, of course, but also your family's history and the winery's history. Can you talk to us about all three?
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm going to try to make a summary because actually we have a long history in Spain as wine growers and winemakers. We started in the 16th century as vine growers, also in the Prenez, but on those times we did not have the resources to build a winery. And that was afterwards in 1870, where there was a generation. Actually, there were two brothers. On one side, there was Miguel Torres and then Jaime Torres, that they joined forces. And they happened to build our first winery in Vilafranca del Penedès. That was, again, in 1870. And since that day, we have been very blessed because the winery has been passing from generation to generation. We are now at the 5th generation since we started to put our name in the wines, no? And every generation had really a great passion for winemaking, no? Even the second generation started even to produce some brandies, also in Vilafranca. But I remember especially the third generation, that was Miguel Torres, my grandfather, no? For me, my grandfather was a great inspiration, and he was a person that really went around the world to showcase the Spanish wines. On those times, the Spanish wines, they were very unknown, but he believed on the quality that we were making, And he decided that it was possible to go around the world and show these great varieties and these great wines that we were making. My grandfather had some difficult times too, because during the Civil War in Spain, our winery was bombed and it was almost all destroyed. But he really worked hard afterwards in order to recover the winery, to build it again, and to continue making wine. No? Actually, after the Civil War, one of the countries that he visited was actually Canada. And thanks to some orders that he got in Canada and the United States, he got enough money to keep making wine in Spain. No? And then, of course, my father. My father has been a great inspiration for me and for my sisters. He was the one starting to plan international varieties. On those times, there were experimental varieties, no? And he really brought to the family a great focus toward single vineyards and towards quality, no? And well, today, after all these years, we continue to be independent in Spain, but we have grown to other places. For example, in the Priorat, no? Priorat is an amazing place. We're going to taste some wines from there, and we are very close. We are only 40 minutes far away. We have a beautiful winery there in Lloar. And then we are in other appellations in Catalonia, like Conca de Barberà, like Costes de Segre, and step by step also in other places in Spain. No? But for us, the important thing is that we keep being a family company. For this at the end is what allows us to look into the long term. Wine is something that you cannot go fast. You need time. Vineyards, grow slowly. You have to build the wineries. You have to age the wine. And I always think that the philosophy of a family is always better. We are very pleased because during the past years we have joined with other families like the Primum Familiae Vini, these 12 families that were in Europe, and that all together we share. We share these values of the traditional winemaking. And they are great friends, and you can also find some of the wines there in Quebec as well.
Excellent. Well, exactly. Thank you very much for sharing your family's rich and very interesting history. Avant de passer à la dégustation officielle, nous prenons quelques minutes ou quelques instants pour écouter une capsule de ma collègue Julie Perrault, experte produit, qui saura mieux nous situer dans la région moins connue de Conca de Barberà et nous parler de ses différentes caractéristiques. À tout de suite.
Merci Daniel et bonsoir à tous. Alors en guise d'interlude ou plutôt de mise en bouche didactique pour accompagner cette première dégustation, j'avais envie de vous faire voyager un peu au cœur de la Catalogne parce que c'est précisément à même ces plus beaux terroirs viticoles que vous allez avoir le plaisir de vous tremper les lèvres ce soir. Puis là, tant qu'à communier en arômes et en saveurs avec l'endroit, je vais essayer de vous y transporter en images. Et là, peut-être que du coup, ça va venir raviver des souvenirs de vacances ou encore vous donner envie d'y aller parce qu'on est évidemment pas très loin de Barcelone, qui est non seulement un port de mer important, mais aussi la destination touristique la plus prisée d'Espagne. Et c'est pas seulement pour ses plages et sa vie urbaine animée, mais aussi pour ses symboles identitaires très forts que sont notamment la majestueuse Sagrada Familia et autres œuvres de l'architecte Gaudí, alors qu'on voit à l'écran le fameux parc Güell. On quitte Barcelone et là, je vous pointe approximativement où se trouve le chef-lieu de production de notre invité, qui est à une 60aine de kilomètres à l'ouest, dans une petite ville qui se nomme Vilafranca del Penedès. Mais ce soir, les vins que vous allez déguster proviennent de deux appellations qui sont situées pas très loin de là. Et en fait, on doit aller un peu plus à l'ouest encore, et ce sont les dénominations d'origine Conca de Barberà en haut et celle du Priorat juste en bas. Tenez, je vous les montre en plan un peu plus rapproché, ne serait-ce que pour que vous puissiez constater qu'elles ne sont pas si loin l'une de l'autre, mais elles ont évidemment chacune leur particularité et c'est ce qu'on va découvrir ensemble ce soir. D'abord, je vous remets mon image de Barcelone et j'attire votre attention sur les montagnes qu'on y voit en toile de fond. Elles sont vraiment déterminantes parce qu'elles vous aident à visualiser ce qui va façonner le terroir de Conca de Barberà. Or, ici, on fait notre premier focus sur l'altitude. Et comme on entre dans les terres, on va quand même subir l'influence du climat méditerranéen, mais on va commencer à avoir des nuances continentales, notamment avec des saisons qui vont être un peu plus contrastées. Je vous parlais d'altitude il y a un instant. Alors, imaginez qu'ici, les vignobles peuvent se retrouver perchés entre 350 et 900 mètres par rapport au niveau de la mer. C'est une particularité qui est vraiment intéressante parce que dans un environnement aussi chaud que peuvent l'être la plupart des régions espagnoles pendant l'été, bien, ça permet de contrer cette chaleur-là et ça va ralentir le mûrissement des fruits, étant donné les amplitudes thermiques entre le jour et la nuit que ça apporte. À titre d'information, sachez que par temps sec, bien, on perd 1 degré Celsius à chaque fois qu'on grimpe de 100 mètres en hauteur. Donc, ça fait vraiment une bonne différence. Si vous êtes des habitués de la marche en montagne, c'est exactement pour ça que vous allez démarrer votre ascension vêtu de vêtements courts et probablement finir en haut avec une petite laine ou un coupe-vent. Et ben, c'est grâce à des conditions comme celle-là que les raisins vont pouvoir se développer lentement et vont donc préserver leur finesse et se développer avec plus de complexité. Puis ça, ben, on aime ça. Enfin, on le voit bien sur l'image à gauche. Les vignobles sont bien protégés par les montagnes, puis le relief est surtout composé de terrains plats ou de collines légèrement ondulantes. Et là, retenez ça parce que vous allez voir que ce ne sera pas tout à fait comme ça quand on va se déplacer vers le priorat. Puis, au niveau des sols, on a quand même une prédominance argilo-calcaire qui est un sol un peu plus clair et qui est un gage de fraîcheur et d'un bon drainage. Ça vient donc s'ajouter à notre équation et donc tout ça va offrir des conditions intéressantes pour mettre en valeur plusieurs cépages indigènes à la région, évidemment ce qui contribue à son originalité, dont plusieurs blancs, mais aussi des rouges aux fruités gourmands. Il semblerait qu'on y cultive plus de blancs que de rouges, mais on doit considérer que dans ces chiffres-là, que ça inclut aussi beaucoup de vins mousseux, alors les fameux cava, que sont les vins de méthode traditionnels qu'on élabore en Espagne. Je vous laisse donc sur cette dernière image où, pour, encore une fois, admirer le paysage. Mais ici, on voit d'ailleurs le vignoble d'où viennent les fruits destinés à la production du Grand Nurales, assurément le plus prestigieux vin de l'appellation. Puis en plus, c'est bien, vous aurez la chance de le découvrir très prochainement. Je vous souhaite donc une excellente dégustation et je vous reviens pour la période de questions. À bientôt.
Les capsules à Julie sont toujours super intéressantes. Nous sommes maintenant rendus à la dégustation du premier vin, soit le Milmanda Conca de Barbera Chardonnay 2013. So without further ado, what can you tell us about this wine and winery, Mr. Torres?
Well, this is a very special wine for the family, and as you mentioned, it comes from an appellation called Conca de Barbera, but this is a single vineyard, so it comes from a very particular place. No, it actually comes from land that is about 16 hectares with very clay soil, and I'm going to explain you that the clay soils are very important for the white wines when we are dealing with Mediterranean climate, because sometimes in where we are, it doesn't rain so much. So at the end, the clay absorbs more the water and help us to delay the ripening. This is a very ancient place. You have to think that already the monks came here. This was a place where was the frontier between the Muslim world and the Christian world, in the Middle Ages. Mm-hmm. And they built a fantastic monastery that is called the Monasterio de Poblet, just very, very close to where we have the vineyards. No? But these monks, the Cistercian monks, they also built like a fortified farmhouse where they started to produce wine, and they were producing also other kind of food that they would eat in the monastery. And this is how this wine was actually born. This is the roots of this wine, no? Because it comes from all the vineyards that are around this fortified farm that is called Milmanda. When my father planted this vineyard, he decided to plant the Chardonnay because you know that the Chardonnay is a variety that was actually grown by the Cistercian monks in Burgundy. So he believed that it had sense to bring this Chardonnay more to the south. And in these particular soils, he really believed that he could do a very good job. So at the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s, there was all the plantation of the vineyard. And then he always had this concept that he wanted to make like a great white wine with a great aging potential as well. No? So from the beginning to the end, Milmanda has always been conceived about a white wine that can be aged, that can defeat time somehow. So if you want to taste this, the wine. This is now the 2013 vintage. The 2013 vintage for us is a classic vintage. We say that we almost got everything right here because we got enough rains during the springtime, and then it was dry during the summertime, but it was not very hot. So really, at the end of the harvest, the grapes could get ripe perfectly, and they were very, very healthy on that side. No. And these vintages that tend to be a bit more cooler for the Mediterranean climate and for Milmanda, they do a very, very good job. No? If you taste the wine, if you smell it, now it's a great time for Milmanda because this aging in the bottle, it helps it a lot to develop, to open up, so you can feel all these aromas about the peach, about the apricots. There's some wild honeys there. There are some herbal infusions that are beautiful, and really they make the wine very complex on that side. No? You can also see that in the nose and in the mouth there's these hints of wood, because it's a wine that has made the alcoholic fermentation in the oak barrel, especially in the Familia Torres. We use 300 little oak barrels, French oak casks, with medium to raw toasting on that side. And then, well, we do half of the malolactic fermentation in oak barrel, and the other half we don't do it in oak barrel in order that it doesn't get so many battery aromas on that side. No? So with this wine, the nice thing is that it has a great connection with the vineyard. It has really a great tension, no? Because the acidity is from the beginning until the very end.
Yes.
I can actually explain you an anecdote that is coming to my mind now. Now we're tasting the 2013 vintage, but the previous vintage, that was the 2012, got very famous because in the last trip of the President Barack Obama that he went to Cuba, and he went to meet Raúl Castro, and there they met in Cuba, and it was very interesting because you could see the two presidents of two different perspectives of the world, and when they met, the wine that they shared together was Milmanda.
Oh, really?
Okay, so yes, so to me it's a great example how opening a wine, you can really put people from a very different perspective and ideas, and they can talk and they can find also agreements.
Well, you see, thank you very much for the description of the wine, and I'm sure we were appreciating the wine before that, but I'm sure we're going to appreciate it even more after all these stories and this description. So right now, I think we have a few questions for you. So Julie, nous avons quelques questions.
Oui, on a déjà quelques questions qui sont entrées et on vous invite à continuer à nous les adresser. De mon côté, je vais faire de mon mieux pour tenter d'en partager le plus grand nombre d'entre elles. J'y vais avec une première. Quelqu'un nous demande faire référence lors d'un événement en présentiel. Il nous dit Miguel Torres, et là, je ne sais pas si c'était vous ou votre père, mais semblait sous-estimer l'importance d'une viticulture verte, raisonnée. De quelle façon cette vision a-t-elle évolué depuis?
Oui. Well, I have to say that when I was a kid, like very young age, I still remember my grandfather, he used to tell us, the more we take care of the land, the better are our wines, no? And he was the first one that decided not to use any herbicide or pesticide far before organic viticulture actually had a certification, no? So he really had this idea in mind, and he was able to share this with my father and with me and with my sisters, no? Then, with time, we happened to certify most of our vineyards on organic viticulture. I believe in organic viticulture. Maybe later we are going to talk more about that today. Being organic viticulture is very positive, but we have to go a little bit further. There are some more things that we can do. and I think it's important. To me, we cannot understand anymore a vineyard as some plants that grow in the soil. No, we basically have to understand that a vineyard is an ecosystem with biodiversity, where every step of the chain of every single animal plays a role. No, the insects, the microbial life. No, and that's why we try to preserve this land as much as we can. No, this is a land where already the Romans used to work here in close to the castle of Milmanda. No, so for us it is very important to make sure that this land goes in the next generations with the best conditions possible.
D'accord, merci beaucoup. Une autre question, on s'interroge sur peut-être est-ce que votre famille détient des vignobles dans des endroits où l'on trouve des vignes préphylloxériques, comme on en retrouve dans l'appellation Taureau, entre autres?
Well, there are some pre-phylloxeric vineyards here, and actually one of the projects that we are most proud of is that already 30 years ago we started a project about to recover the ancestral varieties in Catalonia. This was actually an idea that Monsieur Boval's famous professor for viticulture in France gave to my father, on the sense that probably not only in Spain but in all Europe there were vines that had survived the phylloxera, no? And these vines were growing on a wild basis. No? We have been looking for the past 30 years for ancient vines in Catalonia, and it has been an amazing adventure. We have found more than 60 different varieties, and some of them we can explain later, but they are really amazing to make wines for the future. No? So we strongly believe that the past also has some of the solutions that we need for the future.
Merci, vraiment intéressant tout ça. Quelqu'un aimerait savoir si, de votre côté, il y aurait la volonté de produire des vins blancs de macération, communément appelés vins oranges.
It's interesting because lately we have good friends and a lot of people asking us for this question. Honestly, every year in the Familia Torres winery, we do a lot of different wines, a lot of experimental wines. And for the past years, we have done also some orange wines on an experimental way. We haven't got any one yet into the market. I think that they can be very interesting wines. Maybe we have to wait for the next years. But we're actually doing one in Chile. I failed to mention that aside of Spain, we went to Chile already in 1979. We were the first foreign family going there. And we actually make a very nice wine that has macerated with the skins and has this particular color, and I really love it. So I'm sure that you can find it too.
Génial, merci. Ça nous met l'eau à la bouche. J'ai une autre question. Ça va comme suit. Comme vous semblez être dans la région de prédilection à l'élaboration des cavas, là, je crois qu'on fait référence à Conca de Barbera, est-ce qu'on peut espérer avoir un jour des cavas de la maison Torres dans notre marché au Québec?
This is also like one of the discussions that we always have. No, I'm not sure about this really, because like every family has a passion, and I can say that they are already great producers for sparkling wine in Catalonia and in Conca de Barberá. But the passion of my grandfather was to do still wines, and all our life, all our history has been dedicated to still wines. So we are not such a big family. So sometimes we feel like you can do so many projects in your life, and we still have so many things that we want to say and to express about the still wine that I'm not sure that we are gonna, grow on the side of the sparkling wine. I have to say that we have a very small production, a tiny production of a sparkling wine that I would say that the family drinks almost half of the production that is in the Prenez, and it's called Bardon Kenneth. Oui. But aside of that, we really focus on the still wine still, yeah.
D'accord. Vous venez peut-être de briser le cœur de certaines personnes, mais ça va. Écoutez, merci à vous à la maison pour votre participation, mais le temps file et je dois redonner la parole à Daniel pour la suite de votre soirée.
Merci. So, Señor Torres, you may be a bit timid about the next subject. However, Familia Torres has a foundation that supports many projects and communities. Can you please talk to us about this foundation, but also why it's so important to you and your family?
Well, I have to say that my grandmother was the one that started this foundation. It's the Familia Torres Foundation, and now it's my sister, who is the president, who continues looking for projects that we can do around the world. No? And basically, with the family philosophy, we have been very, very lucky. We are doing what we like. We produce wine. We happen to sell it in many, many countries. We have done a lot of friends, and many of these countries, they have really helped us, on many, many ways. No? So for us, a very important point is to give back to society, part of what society gives to us. No? So we always think that to make a world that maybe has a better future, the kids, the young people are the key, and it's very important to have a good education, to have a place where you can stay. So for the past years, we have dedicated a lot of effort in order to build schools or to build houses that they are shelter for kids that unfortunately, they are in the street in many, many countries, and we actually don't talk a lot about this because, as you can see, childhood and wine is something very different, and we do this because we believe on that, and because it's really fantastic to see, the potential of the kids. Once they have the resources that they need, the guidance that they need, that they can really change their lives and their families. So this is what we like, and my sister is the one that is choosing the projects. We have made projects in China, in India, in Africa, in many places. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much on behalf of everybody for your generosity. It's definitely greatly appreciated. Nous sommes maintenant rendus à la dégustation du deuxième vin, soit le Gran Morales Conca de Barbera 2011. So, Mr. Torres, what can you tell us about this wine?
Well, this wine, as you have seen, it comes from the same appellation that the Milmanda, but actually, even that the vineyard is only, I would say, 500 meters far away from the Milmanda one, they are totally different vineyards. This vineyard actually is very close to the Serra de Pradas. This is a chain of mountains that actually are key for this wine because they protect the vineyards from the warm winds that can come from the Mediterranean. Here we are at an altitude of more or less 400 meters high, 430 meters high. So we're in the Mediterranean, but actually because of this configuration, we really have a climate that may resemble more to a more continental climate, right? So we actually have a climate that is cooler at night. The difference in temperatures between night and day is also higher. And the soils here are very, very particular. To me, are one of the most complex soils that I've seen in Catalonia. When you walk around the vineyard of Grans Murallas, you see these big stones of slate soil that are very, very amazing. And a lot of people think, oh, this is like the Priorat. This is very similar to the Priorat. But soils in the Priorat, when they are very restrictive soils, where the mother rock comes more into the surface, we always call them like kind of warm soils, okay, because they're very restrictive. But the soils in Grandes Murallas, they are not warm soils, they are cold soils, because actually these soils are very, very deep, okay? The stones actually come from the mountain of the Serra de Pradas, that it has been eroded, you know, and the stones have gone down and have mixed with the gravels of a river that is nearby, you know. So it has some of the particularities of a warm soil, but also like a place where the roots can go very deep, you know. It would be, it's amazing, because the roots, after 1 meter and 60 centimeters, they still go down, no? So this allows us to have a consistency between the vintage that is fantastic. One of the key things about this wine is that we really work with autochthonous varieties. This wine is made with actually 5 different varieties. It has Cariñena, it has Garnacha, it has Monastrell, Garrot, and Querol, okay? Just to explain briefly about each variety, the Cariñena is the backbone. The Cariñena brings the structure, this intensity, these green leaves into the wine, this tension that it can have. No, the Garnacha brings always the fruit, this aromatic fruit, this openness that it has in the nose. No, Monastrell also helps to bring a bigger body. You know, it's always a variety with a slightly higher degree of alcohol. And then the Garrot and the Querol, these are 2 ancestral varieties that we have found in these past 30 years. Garrot is very floral, is very nice. We always say it's like the salt and the pepper that we put in the final blend. And Querol is a very strange variety, because it's a feminine variety that actually makes very tiny grapes with no seeds, okay? So it really has a lot of skin if you compare with the amount of juice that it has inside. So a small percentage of Querol is really, it marks the wine, it defines the wine a lot. It's a fantastic variety, and always brings a lot of freshness into the wine. Huh? By the way, well, a lot of people ask, you know, why this wine is called the Grandes Murallas. It's called like this because it's from this wall, this wall that it was built in the 16th century by the same Cistercian monks, and that was the frontier between these 2 walls, no? When you know that we had a lot of influence of the Muslim culture in Spain, and then the Christian culture was trying to recover during the Middle Ages. So it's a spectacular place because the landscape is really amazing, and you can see that the both vineyards in one side and the other of this wall. This is what gives name to the Grandes Murallas. And now we are tasting the 2011 vintage. The 2011 vintage is a vintage that I remember it was quite dry. It was a warmer vintage on that side. So when we're talking about red wines in the Mediterranean, the warmer vintage always are going to bring us like a very intense fruit that is very open, you know, that is very fragrant in the nose. When we were making the 2011, I remember that the days of maceration, they used to be quite long. So this is definitely a wine that always enjoys to have a bit more of time in the bottle. And the wine always becomes smoother and more elegant. And when I smell it in the nose, well, you know, this is a total Mediterranean character to me. When I walk in the forest near the Grandes Murallas, I always find aromas that bring me to this wine, no? All these garrigue notes, this Mediterranean forest with the herbs that, like the thyme, the rosemary, has a bit of licorice there. It's a very complex wine on that side.
Very nice.
And in mouth you can feel it's a wine with a very nice structure. The Cariñena here plays a very good role, but again, always with this freshness that comes from the beginning until the end, no? Now I have to say that the 2011 shows fantastically, shows it had a great evolution. This is a wine that still can age very, very well. But now the final tannins in the mouth, they are very smooth and it's very elegant to me.
And when you say age very well, for how much more would you say? What period?
Well, we can probably open this wine in 7 or 8 years more, But now, honestly, I feel like it's a very hedonistic wine. It's a very good moment to enjoy it. It always depends on the wine lover. There's people with that like the wines a bit more age or less. But
excellent. Well, gracias por la información. Merci beaucoup. So once again, we have more questions for you from our participants. Julie?
Oui, merci Daniel. J'enchaîne à l'instant avec la question d'un auditeur qui aimerait savoir, et on vient d'en parler, vous avez évoqué le cépage Garo. Une personne nous posait la question et vous en avez défini les caractéristiques. Et la question serait la suivante. Est-ce que ce serait dans la volonté de la bodega Torres de mettre en valeur certaines variétés indigènes moins connues, donc j'imagine de la région de Conca de Barbera, mais en cuvée monocépage, pour qu'on puisse bien les découvrir, là?
Yes. Actually, I can tell you that when we started this project of recovering ancient varieties, I have to say it was more a philanthropic project. It was not in our mind that these ancient varieties would surprise us, or that there was this high potential for making great wine for the future. So during the past years and tasting the wines and seeing how these vines get a bit older, we have realized about the huge potential that they have. So, for example, in the Prenez, where we live, I can tell you that we already released some of the first monovarietals of a white wine that is called Forcada. This is the name of the ancestral variety that grows there. I hope that in some time we are also going to release some monovarietal of a variety called Prenez that grows in the Pre-Pyrenees in Catalonia at 950 meters high. And I really would like, to step by step show, the best, the selection of the best varieties that are coming. Because again, there are some that we have fallen in love and they're really, really great wines to us.
Super. Alors, nous demeurons à l'affût pour peut-être des nouveautés dans un avenir rapproché. Une personne nous demande, on sait que vous avez des vignobles dans plusieurs régions viticoles de l'Espagne. Laquelle est votre favorite et pourquoi?
That's a very difficult question. That's a very difficult question because we really fall in love, into the places where we are. To me, it's very hard to choose. But of course, there are maybe two that they are special to us, but from an emotional perspective, I would say. The first one is, the Prenez, because the Prenez, this is the place where the family started, where our passion for wine started, and it's also we're discovering during the past years that the Prenez is actually the oldest wine region in Catalonia. Already 2,700 years ago, the Phoenicians started to teach the Iberian tribes that were there how to make wine and how to grow better vineyards. So Prenez for us is very, very spectacular. We really like it. But then, the Priorat, the Priorat is a magical place. I don't know if many of you have had already the chance to go to the Priorat. I would tell you to please go because it's a place with a special energy. For us, we are very close. We are only like 40 minutes far away, so I go there very often. And it's a place with an amazing landscape, all with this slate soil, with this heroic viticulture, with these slopes that sometimes can be 30 degrees of inclination or even 40. I'm spending a lot of time there because I really feel very connected to the Priorat. Yeah.
Merci. Et vous avez évoqué la viticulture héroïque, c'est vraiment le cas. Et pour y avoir passé un peu de temps, je peux confirmer, mais c'est vraiment, vraiment magnifique. Écoutez, il y a une question qui vient d'arriver. Comme le vin Grand Muralès que les gens dégustent actuellement, mais aussi il y a le Mas La Plana qui est également une autre de vos cuvées qui est très, très appréciée de la part des amateurs des vins de la famille Torres. Et on aimerait peut-être avoir peut-être un peu l'histoire ou la comparaison entre les deux, si vous pouvez élaborer un peu.
Whoa. Yes. Mas La Plana, I would say that is is the wine of the family. When we're talking about the Familia Torres, probably the first wine that will come in your mind will be the Mas La Plana. No, it's the wine that we have in all the celebrations. And this was a wine that was created by my father in the Prenez, in the Mas La Plana vineyard, and this is where my parents live when I was a kid with my sisters, so it has a very high emotional connection. And my father wanted to plant the Cabernet Sauvignon, he had this great idea that he wanted to show that in Spain we could make a great Cabernet Sauvignon, and sometimes even better than some of the Cabernet Sauvignons that you can find in France, no? And then, he made the first vintage in 1970. This actually was not easy because it created a conflict in the family. My grandfather was more traditional on that side, and my grandfather and my father, they were discussing a lot, complaining, saying if the wine was great or the wine was not good, And there was a certain moment in the family that the conflict, went so high that they decided to find someone that could really tell them, if the wine was good, no? So this was on 1979, and this was when they decided to show this first vintage, this first experimental vintage into the Gold Milo Wine Olympic in Paris. Huh? And
j'espérais vraiment que vous alliez là. Je vous laisse poursuivre.
Yeah, so it was a great scandal because this wine, the first Mas La Plana, on those times was called Gran Corona's Black Label from the vineyard of Mas La Plana. It was considered like the number one wine in the competition, no? And then really my grandfather accepted, that my father was doing a good job, and these vines of Cabernet still, are growing there in front of the house. The Mas La Plana is a classic wine, it's a wine that always has a lot of elegance. I've tasted vintages from the 80s, from the 70s, and it's very particular to me. It's the example of the great Mediterranean Cabernets, great aging potential as well.
Merci pour toute cette information, pardon. Et si je peux me permettre d'ajouter, je trouve tellement que c'est un vin qui demeure encore aujourd'hui accessible au niveau du prix, mais qui est tout à fait grandiose, millésime après millésime. Alors, merci pour ça. J'ai une question ici de façon plus générale. On aimerait savoir comment vous entrevoyez les problématiques qu'engendrent les changements climatiques dans vos différents vignobles. Est-ce qu'il y a des démarches entreprises pour pallier aux problèmes que cela engendre?
Yes. I can tell you that without doubt, this is the biggest challenge in the history of viticulture. To us, it's even a bigger challenge than phylloxera, because we really have to adapt, and we really have to do changes on the way that we understand the vineyards and the winemaking. We realized about the effects of the climate change. We became conscious in 2008. In 2008 was the year where we realized that the harvests were coming earlier. That something was happening with the climate. And then, we are a family, and we realized that we had to do something. We had to lead by example. No, we would love that our winery will pass to the next generation, but for that we really have to change things. No, so we started this, I would say, this battle, against the carbon footprint, against the carbon emissions, and then we happened to already reduce from 2008. To 2020, we have reduced 34% our carbon emissions per bottle. Okay, and And now we are focusing that before 2030, we can already reach a 60% reduction. No? Our aim is before 2045 to become carbon positive, so that that everything that we do on that site is it doesn't affect the emissions that we may produce to the atmosphere. No. And this project has been a puzzle of many different projects, no? To start working with our own energy, with photovoltaic cells, photovoltaic panels, with biomass boilers, with geothermal energy to transform the winery on that sense, no? To isolate and to make sure that the winery was the most efficient as possible, no? At the same time, adapt our viticulture. We have been planting some of the highest vineyards in Catalonia. I'm actually, during the past couple of years, I'm planting the highest vineyard in the Priorat in the history at 750 meters high. I can tell you that we are at the end of October and we haven't harvested yet this vineyard, no? Wow. Because the idea is that really we need places where we can delay as much the ripening, no? So all this that I'm explaining is part of this project, but there are more things, no? And especially during this past year and a half or 2 years, no, with all the COVID, no, it gave us a lot of time to be more in the vineyard and to walk around there, and we realized that on one side, we are buying land to plant forests in order to compensate the carbon emissions. But in the vineyard, yes, we are organic viticulture, but we did not know, how to manage the carbon cycle in the vineyard. No? And we came up with the idea of applying some of the regenerative agriculture concepts into the vineyard. No? And that means that actually we want our soils to be more alive. We want our soils to have more organic matter in order that they can absorb more carbon, carbon from the atmosphere. For that to happen, we need our soils to be green almost all the year, okay? Because if we have the cover crop, then what we can do is what we call the carbon pump, okay? That means that every time that we have plants there, they absorb the carbon from the atmosphere and they store it in their roots, okay? And at the same time, every time that we cut that grass with animals or mechanically, these roots, go into the ground because the plant cannot hold them all. And these are carbon chains that stay into the ground, okay? So when I was saying that organic viticulture is great, it's true, but it's not enough, because we have to think about the carbon footprint and the carbon cycle in the vineyard, and not unfortunately, organic viticulture and or biodynamic viticulture, they don't yet talk about this, no. So we have to incorporate these concepts into the vineyard so that we can use our vineyards not only to make great wines, but also to work as a forest, and a forest actually captures the carbon dioxide into the soils and makes our planet a bit better somehow. And this is what we are doing. I have embraced this project. Last June, I did the first symposium on regenerative viticulture, where we explain it also with the help of Alan Savory, a great person that guide me on this for some time, to explain that to the vine growers, how we can evolve our viticulture so that it's even more sustainable for the future and taking the challenge of the climate change.
D'accord, merci beaucoup. C'est vraiment très intéressant. Écoutez, j'ai une question maintenant un peu plus pointue et vraiment, ça m'a donné l'eau à la bouche. Quelqu'un qui a eu la chance de déguster le millésime 99, donc 1999 de Grande Muralès, qui a été servi avec du cerf, avec une sauce réglisse et foie gras. Et c'était en 2011. La question se veut, est-ce que le millésime 1999 de Grande Murales serait dans les bonnes conditions à ouvrir aujourd'hui?
Oh yeah. I mean, this is a very great vintage. It was actually the fourth vintage because the first vintage was 1996, and actually these wines, especially the first decade of the Grandes Murallas, the concentration, I mean the maceration with the skins was a much longer time than the one that we do today, and these wines now they are really fantastic. They really have evolved very, very well, and I think that if they have this bottle, they can really enjoy it a lot, or they can keep it for some years more. But it's really a great wine, absolutely.
Génial, merci beaucoup. Alors, on a soudainement tous envie de devenir amis avec cette personne. On a un commentaire, un couple qui a eu la chance de déguster Mas La Plana 2010 en format, attention, Mathusalem. Alors, de beaux souvenirs qu'on nous mentionne. Et félicitations pour votre mariage aussi. Une question, enfin, peut-être un peu plus générique par rapport aux accords 20 mai. Tiens, c'est des questions qu'on a reçues beaucoup. Qu'est-ce que vous auriez suggéré comme accord d'abord avec le mille mandat et puis avec Grande Murales? Est-ce que vous avez des accords classiques qui vous viennent à l'esprit?
So like a wine and food pairing, you mean, no?
Yes, the classic pairings that you would have for the mille manda and the Grande Murales.
Okay, well, this would be interesting. Well, what comes to my mind for Mil Manda, for example, well, this is a wine that is a white wine with a lot of complexity. Okay, so here you can go for a fish, that already has some kind of flavor, fish from the rocks, that is more intense, that you can really feel more like the ocean, like the sea flavors there, and not the mild fish, I would say. You can also combine with a lot of dishes with rice, like a great paella with seafood, it can be a very good combination here. With the Grandes Murallas, here, I would jump more to the classic meat. For example, game is fantastic here. You have birds that you can hunt, like in Spain we call it perdices. They really have a great flavor that combines very well with the Grandes Murallas. Or also lamb. Lamb is the flavor of the lamb is really part of the place. Where we are. There are a lot of shepherds there. And this wine really combines very well, the tannins that it has, the structure that it has. It really, it's a great combination with lamb. We love lamb in Spain. It's a great meat. Yeah.
Merci beaucoup et on espère à la maison que vos accords fonctionnent bien de votre côté aussi. Nous n'avons malheureusement plus le temps pour d'autres questions à ce point-ci de la rencontre. Et juste avant de redonner la parole à notre invité, je vous convie à l'instant à la présentation de la prochaine région de production. Je vous montre à nouveau ma carte et cette fois-ci, on se dirige un peu plus au sud pour se rendre à l'aire d'appellation Priorat, berceau du dernier vin que vous allez déguster ce soir. En tout cas, avec nous, le reste de votre soirée vous appartient. J'en profite pour faire un clin d'œil au fait que le Priorat, à l'instar de l'appellation bien connue de la Rioja, sont les seuls à s'être distingués au rang ultime des appellations espagnoles. Là, pour faire une histoire courte, on trouve actuellement 70 dénominations d'origine en Espagne, nommées sur leurs étiquettes avec l'acronyme DO plus le nom de l'appellation. Et les deux dont je viens de vous parler sont des dénominations d'origine auxquelles s'ajoute la mention Calificada. Si vous regardez de plus proche les étiquettes des vins que vous avez, vous allez remarquer ce détail-là. Dans le fond, c'est un adjectif qui vient témoigner et même officialiser leur manifestation qualitative sur une plus longue période de temps, mais aussi qui confirme une certaine avancée au niveau de la reconnaissance de sous-zones de production et même de villages particuliers. ce qui peut faire penser à des régions viticoles plus complexes d'autres pays, comme le sont la Bourgogne en France ou le Piémont en Italie, par exemple. Mais là, je ne veux pas trop m'égarer, je reviens au terroir du Priorat. Le Priorat, géographiquement, se trouve lui aussi dans une région montagneuse, mais vous allez remarquer plusieurs distinctions en comparaison avec Concat-Barbera. D'abord, l'inclinaison des vignobles qui peut être vraiment prononcée. C'est clairement pas un endroit où on peut se promener tranquillement avec la vendangeuse mécanique en sifflotant. C'est pas mal plus sportif que ça. D'ailleurs, tout est vendangé à la main. Même qu'on a été obligé en plusieurs endroits de façonner des terrasses pour pouvoir cultiver la vigne. D'ailleurs, on les voit bien sur l'image de gauche. Et à droite, bien, on a un autre élément important. C'est le type de sol qu'on y trouve majoritairement et qu'on appelle l'icorellan, qui est en fait un sol de schiste et d'ardoise carbonifère. C'est un sol très pauvre qui, couplé à un environnement un peu plus chaud, ici la latitude et le sol foncé contribuant, bien, il faut comprendre que les rendements de la vigne vont être très limités. Mais c'est ce qui permet d'arriver à produire des grappes bien mûres et très concentrées, à l'origine donc de vins assez puissants. Ici, c'est justement le paradis du vin rouge et notamment des cépages Grenache et Carignan. Petit complément d'info aussi en ce qui concerne le nom de l'appellation. Priorat, ça vient du nom prieuré. Il faut remonter au 12e siècle, à l'arrivée de moines chartreux de la Provence en France, qui sont venus y fonder un monastère. Et pour l'ériger, l'histoire raconte qu'il se serait basé sur les dires d'un berger qui prétendait qu'au cœur d'une vallée où se trouvait le pin le plus élevé, apparaissait en certaines nuits une échelle d'où montaient et descendaient des anges. C'est ainsi que le monastère fut nommé Scaladei, et si votre latin n'est pas trop rouillé, ça veut dire échelle vers Dieu. C'est d'ailleurs ce qu'on voit sur le logo de l'appellation. Vous y voyez une échelle et deux petits anges. Joli, joli. Maintenant, pour compléter en images, juste avant de conclure et pour vous faire vivre pleinement la situation en altitude de la région, j'attire votre attention sur le massif qu'on voit en arrière-plan et que je vous montre à nouveau ici dans toute sa splendeur. C'est la Serra de Monsanto. Et non, ce n'est pas de la neige, ce sont bel et bien des nuages qui ont l'air, ma foi, fort moelleux et douillets. Et puis, tiens, une petite dernière, tant qu'à être dans le divin, je vous montre ici l'abbaye de Santa Maria. Et voyez à quel point on construit toujours pour être le plus près possible du grand boss. Enfin bref, si vous êtes amateur de nature et de hauteur et que vous n'avez pas peur de vous aventurer dans les petites routes en lacets, c'est vraiment une très belle destination. Et encore là, c'est pas loin de Barcelone. Ça se fait en plus ou moins 2 heures de voiture. En conclusion, je vous laisse sur ces images comparatives de nos deux appellations vedettes qui résument fort bien ce qui distingue chacune d'elles, même si elles se trouvent relativement proches l'une de l'autre. Allez, je vous laisse maintenant en compagnie de mon ami Daniel en studio et on se retrouve pour la dernière période de questions.
So, Mr. Torres, just before going to the educational video, one of our last topics of discussions through the questions was about climate change, which brings me actually to my next question. You have a program called Torres and Earth. What is it about exactly?
Well, Torres and Earth was the name of the program that we decided to name to all the actions that we are doing. No, we have comment about reducing the carbon footprint, the finding of ancestral varieties, how to mitigate the effects, also planting in higher altitudes, but also other things like, for example, convincing our vine growers and our suppliers from glass to cork to capsules that they should also make efforts to reduce their carbon footprint, because their carbon footprint is also our carbon footprint on that side. Yeah. Torres and Earth also relates also to projects about managing water, because water in the Mediterranean is something that is being more and more scarce, and is important. It's important to understand that we are going to manage better the water in the winery and in the cellars in order to continue making wine in the future.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. It goes exactly with what we were talking about for climate change and how to stop with the climate change and everything like that. So definitely a lot of actions that we can all take, even us here in Quebec, in reducing water consumption and things like that. So thank you very much.
I also want to comment, that some time ago we started like a new association called the International Wineries for Climate Action, where we are inviting wineries from all over the world to join us and to really compromise in order that they reduce their carbon footprint. To join this association that we started also thanks to the Jackson family in the United States, we are asking for real investments, for real changes in the wineries. And I believe that this is the only way to really invest and to change the things towards real results.
Well, thank you very much for the initiative. Actually, I hope we have a lot of vineyards who apply to this new convention of always everybody wanting to reduce climate change and get together and together for the planet, and to go together with what you were saying earlier this evening to help the future and the future generations. So. Nous sommes maintenant rendus à la dégustation du troisième vin, soit le Coste Perpétual Priorat 2013. So, Mr. Torres, we're all ears for this final wine.
Well, as I said, this is a region that I really, really love, and for us it was great to go back in the 90s. My great grandfather used to make wine there, but he had to go out because the Priorat for certain years it became under very difficult crisis. People were not appreciating these wines. And it was back in the 90s where there was the miracle of the resurrection of this wine region. So we came back on those times with my father, with my sister. We fall in love with the place. We started to plant vineyards. But what we realized in the Priorat was that the great treasure of this place were the old vines. It's one of the few places where you can find vines that they are very old. We can trace these vines at least in 1945 they were already there. So we're talking about vines that they are more than 75 years old, and sometimes they can reach even 80 years old, 90 years old, 100 years old. So we realized that we wanted to preserve this as much as we could. So we started to produce a wine, the Coste Perpetual, because we use only vineyards that they have have to be at least planted, at least existing in 1945. Most of this wine is made with Carignana, because this is the proportion that you find in the old vines in the Priorat. About 90-95% of the vineyards are Carignana, and then we have this approximately 5% of Garnacha. This is not a single vineyard, because we work with different families that they have these small treasures. We have to go here and there to the different towns, especially Lloar, Porrera, Gratallops in this vintage too, Torroja, Molar. So all these different towns where we have achieved to find these very, very ancient vines. And to us, I'm very happy about the fact that I think that we help somehow to give a bit more of value, to these vines that were a bit forgotten. You probably know that now there's a new classification in the Priorat wines, and we really push a lot forward so that the mention of viñas bellas, that means old vines, will be possible to put on the label only when vines are at least from 1945. So from the future vintages, I would say from already 2019 on, this will be on the label. Okay. And I think that this is going to be a great thing for consumers and for the sommeliers to really know every time that they are having a wine from the Priorat that says Bellas Viñas or all vines, is because it really are very special vines. You have to think that these vines, they have a very low production. They are always planted in what we call costes, and these are these kind of slopes with a lot of inclination. The production, again, is very, very small. It's very, very costly to make this wine, but the character that they bring is really absolutely amazing. This 2013, to me, is also a great vintage. There's people in the period who like more the vintage that are warmer. I personally prefer the vintages that are a bit cooler in the period because, as I said, the period has more warm soils. The mother rock of the period appears almost in the surface. So the plants really have to struggle a lot, and they have to adapt to these difficult conditions. So when the temperatures are more mild and the ripening, you can delay it a little bit. To me, not only you get the great body of the period, but also the freshness there. No? This was a very great vintage with very mild temperatures. The plant was not stressed because of dehydration or anything like this. So it was very, very healthy. And you can taste the wine. This is, well, you can feel this cariñena with this vegetal nose, with this fruit that is also nice, very intense. These leaves, now it is a wine already from the 2013, so it has a very nice aging. It's really starting to show the aromas of the aging in the bottle. And in mouth, what I like about this period compared with the period that started more in the 90s is that these grapes are such I would call them like a diamond. It's really, really great, but you have to learn how to polish that diamond. No, maybe the first period wines were used to be very intense, in body. They used to be with a lot of extraction. Here you can see that even we are talking about the landscape that it has a lot of rocks, but this wine has a finesse, has an elegance in the tannins that to me is very nice. Even that, a period wine will always have more or less a high degree of alcohol. One of the keys of these wines is the pH. The slate soil, this metamorphic soil that grows there, always brings a very low pH, and this really brings a great balance into the wine, and also a very nice aging potential.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for the description. I know for myself, I'll be trying to pay attention next time I go to an SAQ outlet and see a Priorat 2019 vintage to pay attention to the new certification. So can you just repeat that certification one last time? What's the name again?
Yeah, it was actually presented just before the COVID, and we call it the Noms de la Terra, the names of the land. And I think that is a big step forward because we're classifying all the different soils, all the different parcels that you can find in the Priorat. So there's a pyramid, right? Where you can go from a very particular single vineyard that would be a Gran Vida Viña Clasificada, from wine that you can use different kind of vineyards from different kind of villages, DOQ qualified wine from the DO. And I think it's great for the people who really want to go in detail and understand what brings each terroir. It is very different a wine that is actually made with grapes that are in Gratallops and Lloar, that is a bit more cálid, it's a bit warmer than grapes that come from Porrera. Many times we have to wait for 2 weeks between these two villages, so it really makes a big difference. So this is a kind of a culture that we are recovering, and I think that is a great project.
Well, thank you very much again for your passionate descriptions. If I'm not mistaken, I think we have a few more questions for you. Julie, nous avons quelques questions?
Oui, en fait, une personne, en tout cas, quelques personnes aimeraient connaître votre avis sur le temps de passage en carafe pour les vins que l'on déguste ce soir.
Okay. Can you repeat me the question? I don't understand well, maybe.
So how long do we leave the wine in a carafe before serving it?
Well, this depends also on the consumer, I would say. No, me, me, I, me, for the wines from the Priorat, I always like to wait maybe 4 or 5 years. Then I really find that they are evolving very well. Although, of course, it is different a wine that has a lot of Cariñena than a wine that has a lot of Garnacha, no? Cariñena is the backbone of the wines that can really have a great aging potential. Garnacha, it's beautiful when it's young, but and some Garnachas can age well, but of course, if you have the Cariñena, always you have, to me, a bit higher of aging potential, no? So, but still, the wines from the Priorat, you can age them, from 4 years to, if you want, 20 years or sometimes more. No, the key here is the pH that again is very, very low and gives a very great balance into the wine. Okay. To me here, the Cost Perpetual now, 2013, it's very beautiful now. You can age it more if you want, no? But I don't feel like we're gonna get a lot more of anything else, no? Maybe, now it has the fruit, it has this part of the aging. I feel like it's very balanced now.
And for the serving of those wines, how long would you let it breathe before you would serve the wine? So in a carafe, how long would you let the wines breathe before you would serve it for either a dinner or just to be able to appreciate the wine a little bit more?
Well, there are a lot of theories here, okay? But me particularly, I actually prefer to decant more the younger wines, okay? Because most of the times you still have, a higher presence of sulfur there. The wine is in more reduction there. Mm-hmm. And to me, the younger wines, especially the red wines from Spain, when we're talking about, wines that come from a single vineyard, wines that really have a great personality. To me, when they're young, they always need a bit of air, to open up. And as they get older, the wine also get more finesse, and sometimes it also becomes more delicate, Mm-hmm. So I'm not a great fan of really decanting a lot the old wines. I think that sometimes when you decant them a lot, you actually lose part of it. I'm more in favor of opening the bottle. You can have it in your glass and you can enjoy it, and you can see how it changes in your glass, because it's really going to change, but you are going to see the whole process. If you decanted it very soon, you are going to miss part of the wine somehow.
Super, merci beaucoup. Alors, un 2 pour 1 ici. On a une question que je trouve vraiment intéressante. On aimerait avoir votre opinion sur ce que vous voyez comme tendance en matière de profil de vin. Par rapport à la concentration, à l'usage du bois. On sait que les palais évoluent, et vous, de votre côté, vous voyez l'avenir du vin de quelle façon?
Oh yes, this is a very important point, and we actually still have discussions inside the family, because we are in the middle of changing generations with my father and with me and my sister, no? And when you take the wines, but not only from Spain, from many places around the world, from the 90s and the beginnings of the 2000s, there was this conception that more concentration or more of everything would make a better wine, no? So you can see that the extractions were longer. In general, there was more wood, and the wood that it was used, it was more intense, with higher toasting and so on. So these wines most of the time need a very long time in order to get drowned, and they were very, very nice wines, But actually, what we are doing more and more now is trying to make less days of extraction, trying to find more the limit, the finesse, This is more difficult. This is more difficult because you really have to be very specific, on the days. You really have to control very much the wine. But then you can obtain, to me, a superior elegance. Wines that are very liquid, that are really, they have a great finesse that you can really enjoy glass after glass, wines that really bring the message of the vineyard on a very unique way, where you don't have so many intrusions of things that happen in the winery. I believe that the great wines, they don't talk about the winery, they really talk about the vineyard itself, So yes, some years ago we used to judge the wines in terms of sometimes of color, of concentration. I think that we are doing that less and less. I think that we are judging the wine for what it is, and for the message of the vineyard more than anything else. And these wines, because we managed to make them in order to always keep better acidity. They really can age well as well, but maybe it's not, the tannins that hold the wine, it's the acids, that hold the wine, it's the balance that really makes the wine more unique.
Merci, on aime bien. Donc, en effet, on n'est plus tant dans la puissance, mais la structure est là avec la fraîcheur, la vivacité. Donc, nul besoin d'avoir trop d'extraction ou trop de bois. Et en même temps, ça nous permet de mieux apprécier l'authenticité du vin. J'aurais une question plus générique, en fait. Seriez-vous en mesure de qualifier les derniers millésimes que vous avez vécus en Catalogne, à savoir est-ce que certains ont été plus exceptionnels que d'autres ou est-ce que certains vous ont apporté plus de difficultés? On s'en tient à la Catalogne, bien sûr.
The last vintage, I mean the 2021, you mean?
Oui, ou les deux, trois ou derniers, les plus récents, en fait. Est-ce que un était plus facile, un autre plus difficile?
Yeah. Well, I have to say that, for example, 2020 was a more difficult vintage, and here you can really see the producers that really were prepared for that, that could sort the grapes, could really manage well the vineyards and others, because we actually got rain in some vineyards. There was some mildew there, so you could see the vine growers that were really taking care of the vineyards. Those ones still make very good wines, And there were maybe some others that really, they were not paying so much attention to the vineyard. And if you just look somewhere else, just in a couple of days, you could really lose, a very important part of the harvest there. So it was more challenging, but still, we could have good wines there. This vintage 2021 has been quite unique because actually it was very dry during all the first semester. Has been one of the driest first semesters in the past 20 years. So all the white wines came quite early, and then we had some rains at the beginning of September, and then it was much cooler. So for the red wines, really the ripening has been very slow, So it was like strange because we got like one kind of vintage or one harvest for the white wines and another quite different for the red wines. It doesn't happen very often. Particularly, I believe that the red wines they're going to be very good, more on the fresh side, of course, maybe with a bit less of alcohol, but great acidity, and probably a great vintage for the red wines also to age well. Yeah.
Excellent, génial tout ça. Nous n'avons malheureusement plus de temps pour d'autres questions. Monsieur Torres, merci pour la générosité de vos réponses et explications. Daniel, je te redonne la parole.
Merci. So, Mr. Torres, we now have several additional wines which our clients purchased. We have the Maslaplana Penedès Cabernet Sauvignon 2006. We have the Gran Morales Conca de Barbera 2004. And we also have the Mas de la Rosa Priora 2017. Can you briefly comment on these three wines?
Yeah, sure. Well, we already have talked about the Gran Murallas. The 2004 is a very mild vintage compared to 2011. This is quite more mild in terms of temperatures. It's very classic. It's more slow ripening, much cooler on that side. So it has a very great freshness there. Okay. Then we have the Mas La Plana, again, a classic wine for the family. In 2006, it was actually a bit warm, especially the first semester, but then the second part was quite cold. It was quite nice. We actually did the harvest on the 13th of September. So very balanced vintage. Nothing to say. It was really a good vintage. We're very proud of this wine. And then at the end, we have the Mas de la Rosa, the 2017 vintage.
See.
This is a wine that I started to make. This is the second vintage. The first vintage was 2016. Okay. And this is a single vineyard from Porrera, 1.9 hectares. Is the smallest vineyard that we have. A very old Garnacha and Cariñena, approximately 60% Cariñena, 40% Garnacha. And this is one of the oldest properties that exist in the Priorat, at 500 meters high. Is really a spectacular place. It's like a sanctuary where it has been preserved for a long time.
Wow, thank you very much. Thank you very much. It makes us want to visit that region even more, as you were saying.
Please.
Donc, nous voici déjà rendus à la conclusion de l'événement. Donc, avant de passer la parole à notre invité, au nom de la SAQ, moi-même, nous aimerions vous remercier pour votre participation et au plaisir de vous retrouver lors de notre prochain événement. So, Señor Torres, on behalf of the participants, the SAQ, and myself, we would like to thank you for your generosity and your passion throughout the evening when talking about your family and your wines. Thanks to this passion, we experienced a very memorable evening, all while tasting exceptional wines. It's been both an honor and a pleasure to have you with us this evening. Señor Torres, the floor is yours for the final word.
Bon, merci beaucoup. C'était un plaisir d'être avec vous et merci beaucoup pour cette invitation à la SAQ. Et vous êtes tous invités pour venir me voir à les Prenez ou à les Priorat. C'est une place fantastique et vous avez de connaître de ce que vous avez un très bon ami, que c'est à la Catalogne, et ça c'est moi, Miguel Torres. Je vous espère à les vignobles. À bientôt. Merci beaucoup.